They thought it was just another routine inspection, a simple walkaround, nothing more than a checklist of boxes to tick before another Dreamliner took to the skies. But when engineers pulled back the insulation on this Boeing 787, what they found wasn't just wrong, it was terrifying. A component that shouldn't have been there, a system that reacted as if the aircraft was crashing, even while it sat motionless on the ground. Water where there should be no water. Metal fatigue in places where even a hairline crack could bring down a plane in seconds. And what's worse, Boeing allegedly knew. They knew about the risks. They knew about the pressure. But they said nothing. And now, the terrifying truth behind what was hidden inside the most advanced aircraft in the world is coming to light, piece by piece, bolt by bolt. This is the story of what Boeing didn't want the world to see. The one detail that could scare not just passengers, but every airline executive in the world. Stay with us, because once you hear what's beneath your feet on the next flight, you may never fly the same way again. It all started with a hiss, not in the air, but on the ground. During a basic systems test at Phoenix Airport, engineers activated the auxiliary power on a parked Boeing 787. What followed was pure chaos. Without warning, the aircraft's ram air turbine, RAT, deployed. A device designed to save lives only during total power loss at 35,000 feet. But the plane wasn't in the sky. It was stationary. No engines running, no stress on the systems. And yet, the RAT dropped like the plane had just lost all power in midair. This was not a glitch. It was a red flag. A full-blown survival protocol had been triggered, by mistake. Digging deeper, engineers discovered the source. A faulty central power converter that misread the situation entirely, flipping the aircraft into emergency mode. But here's the most haunting part. Boeing had known. During internal tests, the issue was detected, yet no updates were made, no recalls issued, no warnings sent. One rogue signal, mid-flight, and the aircraft wouldn't just deploy the RAT. It could shut down communications, kill autopilot, and leave pilots flying blind in the middle of the sky. 250 lives, left to guess what's happening, while the system spirals out of control. What the engineers found next went far beyond software. Beneath the cockpit, hidden under thick insulation, lies the forward pressure bulkhead, the wall that seals cabin pressure and protects passengers from the near vacuum of high altitude. This part must be flawless, but what they found was anything but. Rivets, the bolts that hold this critical structure in place, were misaligned, undersized, and already corroding from within. These weren't isolated defects. Dozens of 787s showed the same fatal flaw. Why? Investigators traced the issue to Boeing's South Carolina plant, where production lines had been accelerated, inspections skipped, and safety teams pressured to meet deadlines. A rushed build, a weak joint, and a cockpit wall that could rupture mid-flight. If the bulkhead gives way at 12,000 meters, cabin pressure drops to 0 in seconds. Without immediate pilot reaction, passengers would lose consciousness in under 20 seconds. This wasn't a design error. It was a shortcut with a death toll waiting to happen. But there was something even stranger flowing beneath the floor. After a long-haul flight, engineers noticed moisture pooling in the mid-cabin of a 787. At first, they blamed condensation. But when they peeled back the floor layers, what they found was astonishing. Water had been seeping into the aircraft's ENE bay, the electronic heart of the Dreamliner. The place where navigation, flight control, and power systems converge. A space that should be hermetically sealed. And this wasn't a one-off. Water had leaked from lavatories, drinking water tanks, and even drainage systems, trickling through insulation and soaking into circuits. Microscopic metal debris mixed with the moisture, creating a perfect storm for short circuits, smoldering hotspots, and mid-air malfunctions. Even more disturbing? Boeing had known since day one. Internal reports show engineers had flagged the issue, but Boeing responded with patchwork solutions and inspection memos instead of real fixes. They didn't solve the problem. They postponed disaster. Behind the glamour of Boeing's launch videos, behind every press release boasting innovation, lay a darker truth: the shadow factory. A facility where over 120 fuselages were secretly dismantled and repaired without public disclosure, without alerting airlines, and without informing passengers. There, misaligned joints weren't corrected. They were crushed into place with brute force. Internal wiring rerouted by hand. Battery compartments that once burst into flames at Heathrow, repaired quietly, with nothing more than a promise of improvement. And the culture that enabled it all began not in the workshop, but in the boardroom. Ever since Boeing's merger with McDonnell Douglas in the 90s, engineers were silenced, inspections skipped, and profits prioritized over passenger lives. Whistleblowers were punished. Safety became secondary, and the 787, once called the Dreamliner, became a nightmare of neglected warnings, temporary fixes, and hidden danger. Amid the chaos, one voice stood out, not from the media, not from the government, but from inside Boeing itself. A veteran quality control manager, with over 2 decades on the factory floor, had been quietly compiling what he called the list, a log of every defect, every ignored safety warning, every irregular assembly report linked to the 787. He submitted his concerns to superiors. He was told to trust the process. He took it to internal ethics. He was reassigned. When he finally contacted the FAA, his home was visited by lawyers. His files mysteriously disappeared from Boeing's system. But just before vanishing from the public record, he managed to upload the entire dossier to a secure cloud. The contents were explosive. Photographic proof of structural delamination, unreported chemical burns on fire-retardant materials, and internal emails with subject lines like "delay fix, deliver anyway." This wasn't a disgruntled employee. It was the last line of defense, and Boeing had tried to erase him. Few people know that NASA had quietly collaborated with Boeing during the design phase of the Dreamliner, particularly on stress simulations for long-haul fatigue. In 2019, a NASA subcommittee issued a confidential advisory. Under certain takeoff angles and turbulence patterns, the 787's tail section could flex beyond its tolerance limit. The report was dismissed as overly cautious, but following recent investigations, recovered maintenance logs show that several Dreamliners required tail section reinforcement just 2 years into service. One aircraft had stress fractures so deep they reached the electrical wiring embedded inside the rear fuselage. No public recall was issued. Boeing quietly repaired the issue under scheduled maintenance. But according to engineers, that was a code phrase. It meant, fix the plane, but never admit the flaw. Even as NASA warned of structural risk, Boeing buried it, all to preserve a narrative of invincibility. The ripple effect was instant. Emirates paused 787 deliveries. Lufthansa demanded a full structural audit of their Dreamliner fleet. Singapore Airlines rerouted long-haul flights to avoid stress-heavy polar turbulence paths. And passengers? They began searching for tail numbers before boarding. For the first time in decades, a consumer movement emerged. Forums filled with lists of safe aircraft, hashtags like "number not on a Dreamliner," and TikTok videos showing how to identify hidden flaws in the plane's interior. And yet, Boeing's response remained a carefully manicured PR campaign. Images of engineers smiling in white coats, statements filled with ongoing reviews, and "our highest priority is safety." But behind closed doors, panic set in. Because if one Dreamliner had a secret inside, how many others were already flying with the same ghost under their skin? We often think of aviation tragedies as explosions, crashes, headlines. But what about the near misses? The cabin depressurizations, the failed go-arounds, the sudden mid-air shutdowns that are quietly swept under the rug with a vague technical issue post-flight announcement. Hundreds of passengers have experienced symptoms mid-flight: oxygen deprivation, turbulence beyond safe thresholds, cabin pressure drops. And yet, these incidents are rarely logged as failures. They're framed as anomalies. Behind each of those anomalies lies a story: a child who fainted and never recovered fully, a flight attendant with permanent hearing loss, a pilot forced into early retirement from PTSD after a system failure no one believed happened. And now, with what's been found inside the Boeing 787, those anomalies look a lot less random and a lot more like ignored screams in a sealed cabin. The Boeing 787 was supposed to be the crown jewel of modern aviation, a symphony of engineering, innovation, and elegance. But what investigators found inside its frame beneath its floors, behind its panels, is anything but harmonious. It's a hidden war between speed and safety, between shareholders and engineers, between silence and survival. Because what they uncovered wasn't just a flaw, it was a philosophy, one that said good enough is good enough, even when 250 lives hang in the balance. From rivets that rot in silence to black boxes that whisper warnings, the Dreamliner is no longer just a plane. It's a warning label written in steel, cruising at 35,000 feet. And now, the world knows. We know that emergency systems can misfire without warning, that water can flood the heart of the aircraft, that seats, wiring, joints, even the very software designed to save lives, have been compromised by a culture too proud to pause. But the question isn't just what did Boeing hide? It's how long will the world let them keep flying anyway? If what you just heard changed how you look at flying, you're not alone. Subscribe for more hidden truths the aviation industry doesn't want you to know. Turn on notifications, because next time, the story might break before your next boarding pass prints. Share this video with friends, family, and anyone who believes that state-of-the-art should still mean safe.